Hello everyone, welcome to Corvette. Today in this video lecture, we will be discussing about the stomach of the ruminant, the anatomy of the stomach of the ruminant. First of all, before starting, we should remember that the ruminants are the polygastric animals. Now, what does that polygastric signifies? What does the polygastric animal means? The polygastric animals means that they are having more than one compartment in the stomach, right? They have more than one compartment. What does mean? That in the case of the human, we all know we have a single stomach compartment, only one, right? But in the case of the ruminants, there are four compartments of the stomach. Four compartments. Okay, there are four compartments of stomach. But in the case of the human, we just have only one. So, in the case of the ruminants, the stomach is further divided into two subcategories, which is known as forestomach and the two stomach. Okay, so the forestomach comprises of primary rumen, after which there is reticulum, third one is the omasum. Okay, and the true stomach that function like the stomach of the monogastric animal. What are human? Humans are also monogastric animals. Okay, so the function of the abomasum, which is the fourth compartment, the abomasum functionality is just similar to the stomach of the monogastric animal. Okay, so what I'm saying is the stomach of the ruminants is divided into two parts: the forestomach and the true stomach. So the forestomach comprises of these three parts, which is the rumen, the reticulum, and the omasum. Okay, but the fourth part, which is the abomasum, is considered to be as a true stomach where the enzymatic digestion takes place. Why it is called the true stomach? Because the uh, enzymatic digestion take place over here in the abomasum. That's why it is considered as the true stomach. Okay, so this point is clear that the stomach of the ruminants is further divided into two parts, which is the forestomach and the true stomach. So the forestomach comprises of what? The rumen, the reticulum, and the omasum, and the true stomach is comprised of what? Abomasum, which function like that has a similar function as that of the stomach of the monogastric animal. So with this, I would like to move further and discuss all the four compartments in details with their anatomical structure and their internal structure. So let us begin. So first of all, we are going to discuss about the rumen. So primary, you have to know that in the case of the adult, this is the major compartment of the stomach. Okay, but in the case of the young one, it is not the major compartment. Okay, not the major compartment in case of the young one. In the young one, the rumen is not the major compartment, but in the young one, the abomasum, which is considered to what as a true stomach, is the largest compartment. In the case of the young ones, okay, is the largest compartment. Please remember this point. Okay, so let us proceed and discuss the anatomy of the rumen. So first of all, the average capacity of the stomach in the adult animal is about 100 to 230 liters in the case of the ruminants. Okay, and depending on the size, it also varies. Okay, now the rumen alone comprises of 80%, the reticulum comprises of the 5%, and the omasum and abomasum together comprises of 15%. Okay, and the reticulum is the smallest compartment in case of the adults. Okay, that what's the point you have to remember. Okay, now the rumen is the big muscular and elongated sac. I'll show you later on how big the rumen is. Okay, I'll tell you in the later upcoming videos, not in the later upcoming videos, just in the upcoming slides itself. I'll show you how big the rumen is. Okay, now coming on and discuss about the positioning of the rumen. If we talk about the positioning of the rumen, it extends from the eighth rib to the pelvic inlet. Consider this to be the level of the vertebral column. Okay, this is the vertebral column length. Okay, length of the vertebral column. So if this is the level of the what, eighth rib. Okay, and this is the pelvic inlet. So the rumen extend from this length. Okay, from the eighth rib to the pelvic inlet. That's the length of the rumen. You can see how big area does a rumen is comprising in the abdominal cavity, right? I'll show you later on in the upcoming slide also how big the rumen is. So it occupies the most of the left half and the small part of the right. Okay, so if this is the abdomen, consider this is the abdominal cavity. So the rumen is just like present like this. Okay, that's how the rumen is placed. If this is the midline, so the major portion of the rumen is on the what, left side, and a slight part of the rumen is on the right side. It is on the right side, just a slight portion. Okay, but the major portion of the rumen is on the left side. And now there are two surfaces in the rumen and two curvatures and two ends. Okay, we will discuss it. So what I was saying is that how big the rumen is, you can see over here that this is the level, eighth rib, what we are saying, eighth rib level, and this is the pelvic inlet level, pelvic inlet. Now you can see how big the rumen is, how much area is comprising. Largest compartment. That's why it is the largest compartment, because it comprises of the major part of the left side of the abdomen and the slight part on the right. Major is on the left side. Okay, that was about the positioning and the size of the rumen. Okay, now we will discuss about the structure and the surfaces of the rumen. So the parietal surface, if we talk about the parietal or the left surface, is convex, related to the left abdominal wall, diaphragm, and the spleen, and this surface present a left longitudinal groove. Now this sentence is very complex, so let I tell you. See, what is there is, this is the abdominal cavity. What I was saying, this was the rumen, right? This was the rumen. Okay. Now what the line was saying is that the parietal surface, this surface, which is the parietal surface, it is what? First, convex. Okay. Second, it is related to the left side of the abdominal wall. You can clearly see that if this is the abdominal wall, this is the abdominal wall. Okay. This is the abdominal wall. So the parietal surface is in contact with the left abdominal side, right? Okay, so it is on the contact with the abdominal wall on the left side. Okay, tertiary, it is in contact with diaphragm. Okay, and the fourth point is it is in contact with the spleen. You can see here that the spleen is present on the parietal surface. This is the parietal view. Okay, so the spleen is present on the parietal surface of the rumen. It is just in contact with the rumen. Okay, and the diaphragm also, if this is the diaphragm is also, that's how the diaphragm is placed. So the diaphragm is also in the contact with the parietal surface of the rumen. Okay, so what is about the parietal surface? It is convex. It is in contact with the left side of the abdominal wall. It is in contact with the diaphragm and with the spleen itself. Okay, now the visceral surface. Now coming on to the second surface. First surface we had discussed. We all know in an organ there are majorly two surfaces we discussed, which is the parietal and the visceral. The parietal surface majorly faces towards the abdominal wall in major of the organs. Okay, and in the visceral surface is the surface which faces the viscera or the organs of the abdominal cavity or the pelvic cavity, depending on the organ you are studying. Okay, now talking about the visceral surface, it is related to the abomasum, omasum, liver, intestine, pancreas, left kidney, adrenal gland, aorta, posterior vena cava. Why so? As I had mentioned, that see here, this is the visceral surface, right? This is the visceral surface. Obviously, in this small space, all the organ can't accommodate. So that's why the parietal surface isn't in the contact with any of the viscera except the spleen and the diaphragm. Okay, but if we talk about the visceral surface, this is the visceral surface. Okay, so यहाँ पे क्या क्या होगा? एक तो ओमेजम होगा, ओमेजम, एबोमेजम होगा, लिवर होगा, पैनक्रियाज भी होगा, adrenal gland भी होगी. So there are several organs that are present in the visceral surface. The visceral surface is in contact with the several organs, and those are omasum, abomasum, liver, pancreas, adrenal gland, etc. Okay, so that's how the visceral surface is related to. Means it is in contact with these of the organs. I hope through this diagram you are all clear with that stuff. Okay, now the visceral surface have a longitudinal groove on the right side, which divides the rumen, which divides into the branches and enclose the swollen part known as insula ruminis. For that, I show you this. Okay, so this is the visceral view. Okay, visceral. So what it was saying that there is a longitudinal groove. Okay, which encloses the cavity or a swollen part, which is known as the insula ruminis. Okay, so this is the right surface or the visceral surface. Okay, so on this right surface, this is the right longitudinal groove because it is longitudinally. Okay, and this longitudinal groove bifurcates and encloses a swollen cavity with swollen part which is known as insular ruminus. Okay, so what the line was saying as the longitudinal groove on the right side divides into branches and encloses a swollen part known as the insular ruminus. Okay, I hope through this diagram you are clear with that stuff that there is a longitudinal groove. This is the longitudinal groove. Okay, and this longitudinal groove bears an enclosure, means it encloses a swollen cavity known as the insular ruminus. Okay, now the dorsal curvature is convex and related to diaphragm and sublumbar muscle. How so? See, if this is the dorsal part of the abdomen, dorsal abdomen, okay, wall, below which these are the sublumbar muscle, okay, this is the rumen, okay, this is the rumen, okay, and consider this as the diaphragm, right? So, what we are concerned of? We are concerned of the dorsal curvature, which is the this. Okay, this is the dorsal surface. Okay, so it is convex, which is related to what? Which is related to the sublumbar muscle and also related with the diaphragm. That what is what signifying, right? So the dorsal curvature is convex. Okay, it is convex related to the diaphragm and the sublumbar muscle. Okay, so the ventral curvature is also convex related to the floor of the abdominal cavity. Okay, how? This is the ventral wall. This is the ventral wall of the abdomen. This is the ventral surface. Ventral surface. This is the ventral abdominal wall. Okay, ventral side of the abdominal wall, right? And the ventral curvature, which is convex, is in the contact with the ventral side of the abdominal wall. Okay, this part is clear. Now the cranial end is divided into two blind sacs by the cranial transverse groove related with the diaphragm and the reticle, for which I will show you an image. Wait a second. Yeah, here. See, what I was saying, this is the cranial end of the rumen. Okay, this is the dorsal surface. These are the caudal part of the rumen. Okay, caudal part of the rumen. This is the ventral surface, and this is the cranial part. Okay, this whole stuff is the cranial part. Okay, the aspect is clear. The upper one is the dorsal, the back one is the caudal, the bottom one is the ventral, and the front one is the cranial, right? Now, what it was saying that it divides the sac through the, this one is the cranial transverse groove. What? A cranial transverse groove. What it was dividing? It is dividing the cranial end. Okay, it was dividing the cranial end, right? So this is the cranial transfer groove, which is forming the cranial sac also. We will discuss it. So this part is clear now that in the cranial end, there is a transverse groove, which is known as the cranial transverse groove, which is forming the cranial sac also. I'll let you know. See, so what the line was signifying is the at the cranial end, I had shown you that at the cranial end, it is divided into two blind sacs by a cranial transverse groove. Okay, by a cranial transverse groove, it is divided, right? And it is in the relation with the diaphragm and the reticulum. How so? See, if this is the cranial part, okay, we all know after the rumen there is reticulum. So this cranial sac or this cranial part is in the contact with the reticulum, and also there would be diaphragm because in the cranial end also only there is diaphragm, not on the caudal. The cranial end is also is in the contact with the diaphragm. Okay, diaphragm. This part is clear that on the cranial end there is the cranial sac formed by the cranial transverse groove. Okay, there are two blind sacs that are formed by the cranial transverse groove, and that sacs or the cranial part is in the contact with the diaphragm and the reticle. Okay, now the caudal end the caudal end is divided into two blind sacs by the caudal transverse groove. This end is related to the intestine and the bladders. Okay, how? So in this image you can see, in this image you can see that this is the caudal part, right? Caudal part. Okay, this is the caudal part. Now this groove, this is the caudal transverse groove. Okay, which is dividing the caudal part into two sacs. The one is the dorsal sac and the ventral sac is in the ventral sac. Okay. Now what I was saying is there is a caudal transverse groove. Okay. And that caudal transverse groove is dividing the caudal part into two sacs, which is the dorsal caudal sac and the ventral caudal sac. And obviously, if in the cranial end there was diaphragm, we all know in the cranial end there is diaphragm. And we all know that after abomasum, there will be the intestine that is will be present over like this. Okay, like this, the intestine is present in the abdominal cavity after abomasum. Okay, so this end, which is the caudal end, will be in the contact with the intestine. That's for obvious. Okay, That's how the intestine and the caudal part of the rumen is in the contact. Okay, I hope this part is clear. Okay, okay, I hope this part is clear. So this is the caudal part. Okay, and this caudal part would be in the contact with the intestine and the bladder, right? I hope the slide is clear. Okay, now moving ahead, you can see here that this is the mouth, this is the esophagus, and after the esophagus enters at the atrium ventricular. We will discuss it. Okay, we will discuss the atrium ventricular also. And this is the rumen, this is the reticulum, this is the omasum, and this is the abomasum. Okay, this is the abomasum, this is the reticulum, this is the omasum, and this is the rumen. Okay, after the abomasum, the intestine, the small intestine continues. Okay, from the abomasum, the small intestine continues. Right? Now, the longitudinal groove, the left and the right. See, this is the rumen now. If it see, consider this as the rumen. So this is the groove, the right longitudinal and the left longitudinal. Tumour. Okay, groove. Okay, and just like this it is appearing, and if we see from the sideways it will be appearing like this. And if we just place it craniocaudally, means the positioning is towards us. Okay, so now you can see that there is a groove. These groove appear like this. Okay, means slightly inside. Okay, that's why they are considered as the groove. Okay, the transverse groove, cranial and caudal, together marks the outer demarcation between the two sacs. Okay, now we all know that there are dorsal sac and the ventral sac in the rumen, and the two sacs. Okay, so the two sacs are demarcated by these longitudinal and the longitudinal groove. Okay, so the longitudinal groove and the transverse groove. Okay, cranial and caudal, both the transverse groove. These are the caudal transverse groove. This is the longitudinal. This is the transverse groove. Okay, and from the cranial there will be the cranial transverse groove. Right. So the cranial, the longitudinal, and the caudal. These three grooves mark an outer demarcation, okay, between the two sacs, which is the dorsal and the ventral sacs. Okay, now the caudodorsal and the caudoventral blind sacs are separated from their original sac by the corresponding dorsal and the ventral coronary groove. Okay, now what the line is signifying is there are certain coronary groove. Okay, you can see over here. Let me clear the picture first. Okay, you can see over here that this region, this groove, and this groove. This groove is the ventral coronary groove, and this groove is the dorsal coronary groove. Okay, these two grooves are there. So these caudal blind sac, this is the caudodorsal blind sac because it is in the caudal region and on the dorsal aspect. Okay, that's why it is known as the caudodorsal. And on the ventral side, there is a caudoventral blind sac, right? This part is clear. So the caudodorsal and the caudoventral blind sac are separated from the original sac. Which were the original sac? The dorsal sac and the ventral sac were the original sac. And the caudoventral and the caudodorsal, both the blind sacs, are demarcated and separated from the original sac by the help of the what? The dorsal coronary groove and the ventral coronary groove. This part is clear. Wait a second. Let me see. Let me show. So consider this as the rumen. Okay. And we know that there is dorsal sac. Okay. There is ventral sac. Right. There are two sacs. Now there was also what this region and this region. These were two regions. What were they? The first one is the caudal dorsal blind sac, right? And the second one was what? Caudal ventral blind sac, right? Those were the two sacs. Now, what I am saying is that these dorsal and the ventral sac, okay, these sacs have been separated by the two grooves. Okay, this one is the groove and this one is the groove. Okay, so these two grooves separates the caudal dorsal blind sac and the caudal ventral blind sac from the original sacs. Okay, means there is a separation that has been made between the four sacs. Okay, so the caudal dorsal blind sac is separated from the original sac with the help of dorsal coronary groove. Okay, and the ventral blind sac is separated from the original sacs with the help of the ventral coronary groove. Okay, I hope this part is clear, right? This part is clear. The caudal dorsal and the caudal ventral blind sacs are separated from their original sac by the corresponding dorsal and the ventral coronary grooves, right? Now, the coronary grooves are prominent on both parietal and the visceral surface. Means, it was not like that only the parietal surface is having. We all know the parietal surface. What was the parietal surface? The parietal surface was the surface which is facing the left abdominal wall, right? The visceral surface was the one which is facing the viscera. So it is not like that only the coronary groove is present only one of the surface. No, it is present on both the surfaces, right? The parietal surface also bears the coronary grooves and the visceral surface also bears the coronary groove, right? Now the reticular groove, okay, human reticular groove means the groove which is in between the Rumen and the reticulum, right, is the external demarcation at the cranial end. There is an external demarcation at the cranial end. Okay, here's the rumen and the reticulum forms an atrium ventriculi, a dome-shaped structure on which the esophagus joins the stomach. I was, I had also mentioned about the atrium ventriculi in the earlier in the earlier slides, right? So the atrium ventriculi, here you can see that this is the atrium ventriculi on which the esophagus attaches. Okay, it is a dome-shaped structure. It is in the dome shape. Okay, it is a dome-shaped structure, right? I hope this part is clear, right? So at the junction where the atrium ventriculi is there is formed by the rumen and the reticulum, and it is a dome-shaped structure, okay, or the dome-shaped area on which the esophagus joins the stomach, right? Now moving on to the internal surfaces. Internal surface of the rumen is also not that much complex, but a small complexity is there that the internal surfaces has a number of enfoldings. Okay, there are number of enfoldings formed by an additional muscle fibers known as the pillars. Means if see this was the consider this as the external surface, okay, and this one is the internal surface having a pillar. These are the pillars. There is it is a kind of enfolding, right? A kind of enfolding into the internal surfaces, right? So this internal surface is having the foldings, right? So the internal surface has number of enfoldings, okay, by an additional muscle fibers, means there are also muscle fibers present in that, and these are known as the pillars. This is clear that there is enfoldings, right? There is enfoldings in the internal surfaces, okay, which are also in addition with the muscle fiber, and they are known as what? Pillar. Okay. Now the cranial pillar is oblique fold. Okay, the cranial pillar is an oblique fold between the cranial ends of the dorsal and the ventral sacs of the rim. What it mean is, you can see this is the dorsal sac, this is the ventral sac. Now this is the dorsal sac, this is the ventral sac. Okay. Now to the cranial end, this is the cranial end, right? This is the cranial end. Okay, clear with the positioning, right? Now on the cranial end, there is a oblique. This is the oblique cranial pillar. Okay, means there is an oblique enfolding into the internal surface of the rumen. Okay, onto the cranial end. Means आगे की तरफ cranial end में एक oblique enfolding है. Okay, which is cranial to what? The dorsal sac and the ventral sac. Right? This is the cranial enfolding. Right? This is the cranial enfolding. Okay. Now the caudal pillar is very thick and separates the caudodorsal and the caudoventral blinds. How? You can see this is the caudal region, right? This is the caudal region, right? In this caudal region, we all know there were two blind sacs that we had discussed also, okay, which were separated from the main sac with the help of what? The coronary grooves, the dorsal coronary groove and the ventral coronary groove. Now, if we come on the internal structure aspect, okay, if we come on the internal structure aspect, so these two sacs, which are what? Caudodorsal, the caudodorsal blind sac and the caudoventral blind sac. These two sacs are separated with the help of what? There is a caudal pillar. Okay, it is this is the caudal pillar. Okay, you can see over here that this is the caudal pillar, right? So what the caudal pillar is doing, it is separating the caudodorsal and the caudoventral blind sacs of the rumen, right? Now the right and the left longitudinal pillar extend from the corresponding right and the left end of the cranial pillar, and an accessory pillar also extends from the dorsal aspect of the right longitudinal pillar. From the right and the left end of the caudal pillar, dorsal and the ventral coronary pillars extend along the corresponding groove. Now it is quite a complex line, right? Now what it is saying is, it is not like that the cranial pillar is only on the left side of the rumen or the right side. It is on the both side, right? On the both side, right? It is on the both side. The cranial pillars are on the both side. Now, from the right, if we see an aspect of the right side, we are looking at from the right side. Okay, we are seeing the aspect of the right side. ओके राइट साइड का एस्पेक्ट देखें अगर हम तो क्या होगा सो फ्रॉम द cranial, this is the cranial pillar, right? From the cranial pillar there is an extension of a right longitudinal pillar. Okay, this is the right longitudinal pillar. From here to here, this is the right longitudinal pillar, right? And from which the right longitudinal pillar is extending from? It is extending from the cranial pillar, right? This is the cranial pillar, and from this cranial pillar, the right longitudinal pillar is extending. And onto the dorsal aspect means right longitudinal pillar के ऊपर, right longitudinal pillar के dorsal aspect में क्या है? Right accessory pillar, right? What the line was saying is, an accessory pillar extend from the dorsal aspect of the right longitudinal pillar. Okay, what it's saying that, let me change the pen color. See, is this was what the right longitudinal pillar. Now this is the right accessory pillar, which is on present on what? The dorsal aspect. Right longitudinal pillar के ऊपर है. Okay, so this was the structure of the longitudinal pillar and the accessory pillar. And both the pillars, from where the longitudinal pillar is extending, it is extending from the cranial pillar, right? Now the similar side on the left side also there is similar concept. Means same on the left side there would be left cranial pillar. Okay, and from the left cranial pillar what will be the extending? the left longitudinal pillar, and above to the left longitudinal pillar, what will be there? A left accessory pillar. Let me also tell you like this. The left aspect, let me clear with the left aspect. Okay, see, if this is the cranial pillar, left cranial pillar, say. Okay, so from the left cranial pillar, there will be extension of what? Left longitudinal pillar. Okay, and on to the dorsal aspect of the left longitudinal pillar, what will be there? What? Okay. Left accessory pillar. Okay, that's how the pillars are there. And what were the pillar? They were the enfoldings and with an addition of what? The muscle fiber. Okay, so the mucous membrane covers the papillae except at the edges of the pillar. Means at the edges, this is the enfolding, this is the edge. Okay, this is the edge. So the mucous membrane papillae, because in the internal surface there were several finger-like papillae. Okay, finger-like papillae होते हैं इसमें internal surface पे rumen के. Okay, which also give a Turkish towel-like appearance. Wait a second, let me write it properly. ये क्या है? Finger-like projections internal surface पे, right? और ये finger-like projection कैसा appearance देते हैं? Turkish towel-like. Okay, the appearance is like a Turkish towel. Okay, so the mucous membrane covers all papilla except the edges of the pillar, and the color of the mucous membrane is brownish in color, as you can see in the picture itself. Okay, I hope you are clear with the pillar concept. What are pillars and how many pillars are there? There are cranial pillar, the caudal pillar, and the right accessory pillar, which is present on the dorsal aspect of the longitudinal pillar. Okay, I hope this stuff is clear to you. Okay, if not, you can rewind the video and also again watch it again about the aspects of the pillars. Okay, now the right, the reticular groove that we had seen and discussed in the starting also about the reticular groove. So it starts from the cardia. It starts from the cardia, passes on to the right wall of the atrium ventriculi. Okay, so reticular groove, and this is the reticular groove. It passes from what? It passes from the cardia, and what from where it is passing? It is passing from the right. If this is the right wall of atrium ventriculum, right? It is the right wall of the atrium ventriculum. So the reticular groove starts from the cardia. The starting is from the cardia region. Okay, start from the cardia region, passes down to the right wall of the atrium ventriculi. It touches the right wall of the atrium ventriculi, means it passes from the right wall of the atrium ventriculi, then to the reticulum and terminates at the reticulo-omasal groove. Okay, reticulo-omasal orifice means this reticular groove. It runs from the cardia, passes along the right wall of the atrium ventriculi, then it passes through the reticulum and terminates. Where is the termination? The termination is at the reticulo-omasal orifice. Right? This part is clear. Now this groove possesses two lips, the right lip and the left lip. Okay, as well as a floor, thereby encloses a tubular bypass of the rim. See what happens in the young stage. I had mentioned it earlier also that in the young stage, the rumen is not developed. Okay, okay, rumen is not developed much. Okay, And we all know in the early stage we feed the young calves with the what? We feed the young ones with the colostrum, right? And colostrum is very much necessary for the immunity purpose also. So the rumen doesn't have the capability to absorb the what? The constituent of the colostrum, right? So what happens? The colostrum directly bypass. What means the bypass? Means it do not go into the rumen. Actually, in the case of the adults, what is the flow? So firstly, there will be mouth. The feed will be in the mouth, then passes through the esophagus, reach rumen, then reticulum, then omasum. Okay, then omasum, then abomasum, finally into the small intestine, and then the large. Right? But in the case of the young one, this was the case of the adult. This was case of the adult, right? But in the case of the young one, if we see that from the esophagus, the colostrum directly bypass into the reticulum, then to the omasum, and then to the abomasum. Means we just skip the rumen and directly with the help of these lips, means these right and the left lip, these lips encloses, means these lips close. As these lips close, the colostrum that we feed to the young one, it directly reaches the reticulum and then passes to the omasum and then to the abomasum. ओके मीन्स ये जो दो लिप हैं ये क्लोज हो जाती हैं और इस लिप्स के क्लोजर की वजह से जो हम कोलेस्ट्रम फीड करेंगे वो डायरेक्टली बाईपास हो जाएगा र्यूमन से और कहाँ पे पहुंच जाएगा डायरेक्टली एबोमेसम में ओके सो द ओमेसल ग्रूव इज द सेकंड पार्ट ऑफ द गैस्ट्रिक ग्रूव which passes the reticulum to the abomasum. Okay, this combined groove functional in the suckling calves by a reflex of the closure of the groove, closure of the lips, sorry. So the lips closes, okay. So the lips closes, okay. So when these lips closes, this forms a bypass for what? For the milk, okay. So that the milk passes from the esophagus to reticulo-omasal orifice and then to the abomasum directly. Okay, so this was all about the flow of the milk. That's why these lips are necessary in the young calves. So in the young calves, there is the closure of the lips, right? Those lips are present in the reticular groove, right? I hope this stuff is clear to you. Now coming on to the second part of the stomach of the ruminants, which is the reticulum. It is the smallest segment, okay? Now, it is the smallest compartment of all the stomach, cranially related to the diaphragm and liver, and caudally related to the dorsal sac of the rumen and the abomasum. How so? If this is the what? Your reticulum. Okay. So cranially it is related to what? It is related to diaphragm and the liver. Okay. It is related to what? Cranially, right? So consider this as the cranial aspect. So it is related to what? Liver and the diaphragm cranially, and caudally it is related to what? The dorsal part of the rumen, dorsal part of rumen means the dorsal sac itself and the omasum. That's how they are related. Okay, so if you see in the picture also that this is the stomach, right? And cranial to the reticulum, there will be wait a second. Cranial to the reticulum, there will be what? The diaphragm, right? There will be diaphragm. Okay, and so the cranial end will be in contact with the diaphragm and the your what liver and the caudal. This is the caudal. This will be in the relation with what? The dorsal sac of the rim and the omasum. Okay, the stuff is clear. Having a two surface, two curvature, and two ends. Okay, the parietal surface is convex as usual and related to diaphragm as the liver. This is the parietal surface. Okay, the vessel surface is related to the atrium ruminus. Okay, atrium ruminus से vessel surface in contact होता है. Okay, and the dorsally this surface is in continuous with the wall of the rumen. मीन्स जो डॉर्सल रीजन है रेटिकुलम का वो किसके साथ इनकंटिन्यूस है? Wall of the rumen. Okay, so the greater curvature is in the left ventral border, okay, situated at the level of the seventh rib and related to the diaphragm. So the greater curvature of the reticulum is the left ventral border, okay. So जो left side का ventral border है reticulum का वो greater curvature form करता है reticulum का और situated कहाँ से? seventh rib से लेकर diaphragm, okay. And the lesser curvature is present at the right dorsal aspect, means right side में dorsal aspect में, means right side dorsal aspect, this one right side dorsal aspect, वो कहाँ पे था? Left ventral border, left side ventral border. This is the greater curvature, this is the lesser curvature, and this is the reticulum, right? So the reticulum in sheep and goat is comparatively of the larger size, and okay, and the ventral part is slightly curved backward. You can see here also that this is the ventral part, right, which I am marking. This is the ventral part, and this is slightly curved also, right? Slightly curved backward. Okay. Now coming on to the internal surface. The internal surface of the reticulum appears as a honeycomb structure. Okay. It is having a honeycomb appearance because of the fold of the mucous membrane. You can see that it is looking like a honeycomb, right? It is looking like a honeycomb. The chambers are enclosed by the mucous fold. The small folds are covered by the pointed horny papillae. Means you can see over here, these are the small pointed papillae, horny papillae. Okay, so there is presence of what? Pointy horny papillae also. So the chambers are large at the fundus area and smaller at the neck. Means if this is the reticulum, so the chambers, these chambers, okay, chambers that are formed, the chambers are larger in the fundus region. This is the fundus region that I am marking. Okay, they are larger at the fundus region, and as it approaches the neck, these fold approaches the neck, the size of the chamber reduces. Okay, this is how you can see here also. This is the neck. This is the fundus of the reticulum. Okay, so you can see the chambers are larger in the size in the fundic region, while in the neck region the size reduces, right? So the mucous membrane close to the reticulo-omasal orifice has some claw-like horny papillae. Okay, so there were claw-like horny papillae at the what? Reticulo-omasal orifice, from where the which is the junction between the reticulum and the omasum. Okay, now coming on to the what? Omasum. Now this is the third compartment that we are about to discuss, the omasum. Okay, now come on. So it is roughly oval in shape. Okay, roughly oval shape. It is laterally compressed. Means what? From the lateral aspect, we see that this is oval in shape and compressed laterally. From the lateral aspect, the omasum is compressed due to the packaging of the omasum in the abdominal cavity. It is slightly laterally compressed. Okay, it is situated at the level between the 7th and the 11th rib at the right side of the medial plane. What does it mean? If this is the abdominal cavity, this is the midline. So omasum is placed in the close to the midline and just on the right side. And the next thing is what? The positioning, about the positioning. This is the what? Your 7th rib. This is your 11th rib. Okay, so the omasum is present in between the 7th and the 11th rib on the right side of the median plane. Right? Now the parietal surface or the right surface is in the relation with the diaphragm and the liver, right? and the visceral and the left surface is in the relation with the rumen, reticulum, and the abomasum. Okay, the ventral border sometimes remain in contact with 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 the abdominal floor, right? So the uh, omasum, this this omasum sometimes is in the contact with the abdominal floor. Okay, is in the contact with the abdominal floor. Now it presents a hypochondriac right side में hypochondriac region होता है. Okay, it is the right hypochondriac region present in the omasum. Okay, in sheep and goat, this compartment is comparatively of the smaller size and therefore do not come in contact with the floor of the abdomen. Okay, so coming onto the internal surface, there are crescent shaped fold. Crescent. These are the crescent shaped folds that are present in the omasum. Okay, you know the crescent shape? This is the crescent shape. Okay, so there are about 100 crescent shaped fold known as laminae. Okay, it is important to know that it is known as the laminae. And on the basis of the height of these folds, these are considered of the 4 to 5 types. Okay, now there are two openings. Okay, one is the reticulo-omasal orifice and second is the omaso-abomasal orifice. How so? See, this is the omasum. In front of the omasum, what will be there? It is the abomasum. And prior to Omasum, what was there? Was the Reticular. Now, this will be what? The Reticulo Omasal Masal orifice. And this will be what? It will be the Omasal Abomasal orifice. Right? This was the about the line. There are two openings in the Omasum. Okay. Now, these folds are arranged in a chronological manner. The largest of the folds are about 12 in number, means there are type of fold that we had discussed about earlier, that there are 4 to 5 types. So the largest fold means the largest crescent shaped folds are 12 in number. Okay, and the floor attached to the wall of the organ through their greater curvature, while the lesser curvature are remain free and having a numerous papillae. What it is saying is, consider this as the floor of Omasum. Okay, so the greater curvature of the laminae, if this is the laminae, okay, so the greater curvature is in the contact with what? The floor of the omasal wall, and the lesser curvature remains free and facing the what? The lumen of the omasum, okay, and bears certain papillae also. Okay, this part is clear that the greater curvature is in the contact with the floor of the omasum, while the lesser curvature is free and faces the lumen of the omasum. Okay, now coming on to the fourth compartment and the last compartment of the stomach of the ruminants, which is the abomasum. Okay, so the abomasum, it is what? The true stomach. Earlier, the three were the four stomach, and this is the true stomach. Okay, this one is the true stomach. So it is the true stomach, elongated saccular, means it is a sac-like structure. It has two parts, the fundus and the pylorus, that are separately incompletely by a constriction. Okay, so there are the region which is closer to the omasum. The largest part is the fundus. The largest part is the fundus. This one is the pylorus. Okay, so the fundus and the pylorus are separated by an incomplete constriction. There is an incomplete constriction over here which separates the two regions, and the fundus region is just after the omasum, and the pylorus region continues further to form the duodenum. Okay, it will continue lead to the duodenum. Okay, so the fundic part extends along the length of the body, means if this is the body of the abomasum, Okay, so it continues throughout the length of the, so the fundus continues throughout the length. Okay, it extends a lot, means the major portion is comprised of the fundic region, right? And related to the ventral sac of the rim, means it is, this is the ventral, this is the surface, right? This is the fundus region, and when it will be in position, it will be in the contact with the what? The ventral sac of the rumen, right? When we place, see the normal positioning is not like this. The normal positioning is like what? I'll show you. Yeah, like this. So this is the abomasum right over here. So abomasum is curved backward also and is in the relation with what? The ventral sac of the rumen. Okay. I hope from through this image you are clear. Okay, so it is in the contact with the reticulum, omasum, and placed at the xiphoid region. Okay, so xiphoid, it is a region in the cavity, right? So the right and the lateral surface is related to the liver. So the right surface of the abomasum is in the contact with the liver. I'd also shown you the impressions that are present on the visceral surface of the liver. In my previous video, I had mentioned it earlier also that there were several impressions on the visceral surface of the rumen, and one of the impression was of the abomasum. ठीक है, visceral surface पे कई impressions थे liver की, और उनमें से एक impression abomasum impression भी था. Okay, now the pyloric part turns upward, means ऊपर की तरफ उठेगा pyloric part, ठीक है, and along the caudal border of the omasum becomes continuous with the duodenum. I had told you also that it will continue as a duodenum, means it will continuous with the duodenum. So parietal surface is in the relation with the abdominal wall, or abdominal floor, sorry. It is in the relation with the abdominal floor, and the visceral surface is in the relation with the rumen and omasum. Okay, the visceral surface was in the relation with what? Omasum and the rumen. Precisely on the rumen, which part? The ventral region of the rumen. Okay, so the body is placed more towards the left side of the midplane. What does it mean? We have told that what? If this is the abdominal cavity, this is the median line, right? So what it is saying that it is more towards the body of this abomasum is more on the left side, while the omasum was on the right side, right? So it is moved to the left side of the median plane, right? So the body is placed more towards the left side of the mid plane. This is the abomasum, and this is the omasum, right? I hope this part is clear. Coming on to the internal surface, so interior of the abomasum consists of three granular areas. Okay, there are three granular areas that are present. The cardiac gland are present in the narrow zone close to the omaso-abomasal orifice. Means just after the omasum. Okay, just after the omasum, the cardiac glands are present in the narrow zone. Okay, just near to the what? Omaso-abomasal orifice. The fundic and the pyloric gland are found in their respective zones. I had told you also that this is the consider this is the pyloric region. This is the fundic region. So the fundic gland will be present in the fundic region, and the pyloric gland will be present in the pyloric region. So okay, so there are about 12 oblique fold within the fundic region, which extend from the abomasal groove to the greater curvature of the organ. You can see that if this is the abomasal groove, okay, so these what are these? These are the oblique fold. These are the oblique fold. These are running from what? The abomasal groove to throughout the greater curvature, means the greater part of the abomasum. जो greater curvature है उसके along पे run करेगा, right? So from the abomasal groove to the greater curvature of the organ. These folds are thick, glossy, and reddish in color. Okay, you can see these are glossy red in color, right? So the mucous membrane of the pyloric part is devoid of any fold, but wrinkle means wrinkled होती है. जो पायलोरिक रीजन की जो म्यूकस मेम्ब्रेन है वो फोल्ड नहीं फॉर्म करती है. इंस्टेड दे आर रिंकल्ड इन नेचर. ओके, दे आर रिंकल्ड इन अपीयरेंस, राइट? And the circular muscle fiber at the wall becomes thick at the junction of the duodenum to form the pyloric sphincter. What does it mean? See, what I was saying is this was Omasum, right? After Omasum, what were there? This is what? Okay. Now this is what? Abomasum. This is the cardia region. The major region is what? Fundic. This is the pyloric region, right? So what I had mentioned that the pyloric region don't have the folds, but in the pyloric region, this is the pyloric region. Okay, so in this pyloric region, over here, okay, over here. So there is extension of the circular muscles to form a sphincter known as the pyloric sphincter. Okay, so that was the line signifying that the circular muscles at the wall becomes thick. मीन्स यहाँ की वॉल की जो सर्कुलर मसल्स होंगी, इस वॉल की जो सर्कुलर मसल होंगी वो थिक हो जाएंगी. और वो थिक कहाँ पे हो रही है? जंक्शन पे. किस किस के? एबोमेजम के पायलोरिक रीजन पे और ड्यूडेनम के. और क्या फॉर्म कर रही है? पायलोरिक स्फिंक्टर. Okay, so this was all about the stomach of the ruminants. Okay, so we had discussed successfully the four compartments of the stomach of the ruminants. The prime three one will be the forestomach, and the later one was the, which is the abomasum, is the true stomach. Okay, so with this, it is the time to end this lecture, and I hope every part is clear of this video. And in the later upcoming video, we will be discussing about the kidney of the ruminants. Okay, but I'll end this lecture because the video is quite lengthening over here. Okay, so with this, thank you everyone, and I'll talk to you, and we will discuss the later about the kidney of the ruminants also. Okay, so thank you everyone. Thank you.